Imagine lowering yourself into the earth, people around you supporting you.
2023, where popular blockbuster franchises took a back seat to more innovative, thoughtful, and endearing cinema.
There's a word in Korean, inyeon. It means providence or fate.
Now look, I know Cat Williams already welcomed us into 2024 a while ago now, and I'm super late with this video.
You're late.
But I really wanted to hold off until I'd seen all of the movies I had to cross off my list, in particular this one, and I'm glad I did. Also, I wanted to take my time and give my genuine thoughts, and even rewatch a couple movies so I could give you guys the best list I could.
No one takes us off of this earth until God calls us all home.
In a year where we had beautifully constructed yet heartbreaking masterpieces, to movies like this.
The bear! It did come.
Movies no one's seen, to movies everyone's seen. So without further ado, some quick honorable mentions. The Artifice Girl can join the best of relatively recent sci-fi fare. Her, Ex Machina, and Blade Runner 2049, that thoughtfully explores the question of what it means to be human, except on a micro-budget, indie-level kind of vibe. This is a film where the less you know going in, the more satisfying you're likely to find it, so I definitely won't spoil anything for you. It's definitely the best film that you've never heard of this year.
Gareth, do you recognize this girl?
Yes.
What's her name?
Cherry.
Everything that a blockbuster should be. Great characters, enthralling and oftentimes terrifying action set pieces, and most importantly, an emotional weight at the heart of the film. The way the film touches upon post-World War II Japan, PTSD within our protagonist, as well as the draining feeling of not living up to what you expect for yourself. I also love that this isn't no anti-hero Godzilla, but rather a havoc-inducing monster where every action scene is earned because of the deep connection you have with the characters. This film kind of reminds me of this year's Top Gun Maverick, in the sense that it's very formulaic and cliched, but executes everything so well that it's not ever distracting from the experience. I truly hope Hollywood takes some lessons from Godzilla Minus One. The big screen adaptation of Judy Blume's 1970 classic of the same name stars this girl, who moves with her parents from New York City to the New Jersey suburbs late in the summer of 1970. Her parents, Barbara and Herb, and I mean, way to be Herb, are eager to raise their daughter in a more rural, homey setting than their tight Manhattan apartment, but this move devastates Margaret.
Let me just be normal and regular like everybody else. Just please, 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 please.
The film wonderfully navigates the complexities of adulthood, friendship, and self-discovery through the authentic lens of Margaret. This film is genuinely funny, emotional, and extremely heartfelt, while touching upon complex themes and ideas such as religion and melding into societal norms and expectations. At its core, the film is about the little moments that are a part of growing up that might seem unimportant later on in life, but feel huge and earth-shattering when they're happening.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Meticulously crafted, intellectually stimulating, and infused with dark comedy, David Fincher's The Killer utilizes its seemingly straightforward storyline to reveal a complex exploration of a very flawed character, featuring an outstanding performance by Michael Fassbender.
I find music a useful distraction, a focus tool. Keeps the inner voice from wandering.
Filled with expertly composed sequences undone by the protagonist's relentless observations about the meaningless of existence, The Killer feels like an attempt to highlight its own emptiness. The film is thrilling, amusing, and even moving to some degree, especially considering Fincher's own reputation as a perfectionist. This is one of 2023's best films, proving much deeper than it initially seems. Really quick, before we get into the top 10, if you could drop a like or consider subscribing to the channel, it would mean the world. If you're new to the channel, we just talk everything movies and TV, and I'm going to be a lot more active in 2024, so join the squad. Okay, first up. Like the BlackBerry itself, no one is talking about this movie, which I don't know why they'd be talking about the phone in 2024. One of the year's best written and perfectly paced dramas about the rise and fall of RIM and the invention of the BlackBerry.
Get this baby in the hands of every Fortune 500 executive you could find.
We call them crackberries.
Blackberry is more than just a bleak, cautionary tale. It's a story of how tech culture, as we know it today, took root, bloomed, and died before it even had a chance. Between corrupt business partners, childhood friends, and everything in between, Blackberry has a way of telling a devastating true story in a way that feels unique, flashy, and fun. Blackberry is loose, almost feeling improvisational. The camera roves, jitters, and pulls focus in an instant, kind of shot somewhat like The Office. The poppy humor and fly-on-the-wall, hyper-realistic style combine in compelling ways, and the performances feel similarly off the cuff. It all contributes to why the film feels so authentic, as do the performances, especially that of Glenn Howerton and Jay Baruchel.
I created this entire market.
The Research in Motion co-founder Douglas, or at least a fictionalization of him, says early on in the film, "I finally understand that quote, when you grow up, your heart dies." And that's essentially what this film is about. Hands down the best comic book film of the year, which isn't saying much, Across the Spider-Verse actually one-ups the beautiful animation of its predecessor. The attention to detail and fascinating artistic choices of the illustrations is consistently enthralling to watch on screen. It beautifully matches the heartfelt and complex story that plays out wonderfully as we take the twists and turns on the adventure with Miles. And in many ways, the film is also Gwen's story here as well. The fact that this sequel did not disappoint whatsoever is an achievement on its own, but to exceed the original in many facets is extraordinary, and I can't wait to see where it goes next.
He wants to go out into the world and do great big things.
Not bad, kid.
One of the funnest experiences I had watching a movie this year. I went in knowing nothing about the film, and left being blown away by its execution. If you don't know, the film follows an average family man who finds his life turned upside down when millions of strangers suddenly start seeing him in their dreams. However, when his nighttime appearances take a nightmarish turn, he's forced to navigate the consequences of his newfound stardom.
Somebody wants to interview me.
This is strange. Maybe you should take a minute and think before you do anything drastic.
The film is a cautionary tale of fame and influence and provides wonderful commentary on the cancel culture climate of today, which may sound tiresome, but it does so in clever ways that I had never seen done before. It's about how the figures we encounter in life become characters in our own personal, alternate realities, in a way that feels very relevant and useful in light of contemporary celebrity culture. It's a long-standing fact of the social world that the more famous someone becomes, the more they belong to others, and the less they belong to themselves.
Dad, please help me!
I'm not actually doing anything to them.
But Dream Scenario pushes an interrogation about this to extremes in a way that is just endlessly entertaining. I've seen the film twice now, and I'm still not sure what genre it falls under. It has a way of leaking into all genres, but executes them all wonderfully. Nicolas Cage gives one of his best performances here, as I was captivated from the opening scene. Dream Scenario is a very thoughtful and thought-provoking exercise, and one that I have seemed to like more than most. It's curious about what it means to have a captive audience, and also how your audience can hold you captive.
I guess I'll see you in my dreams.
Plucked straight out of a different era, The Holdovers instantly brings with it a sense of warmth and nostalgia unlike anything else I have watched this year. The Holdovers is a wonderful ode to the films that came before it, as it follows a cranky old history teacher at a New England boarding school who is forced to chaperone a handful of students with nowhere to go on Christmas break.
You know, he used to be a student, right? Yeah, that's why he knows how to inflict maximum pain on us.
Going in, I expected a feel-good Christmas movie, and what I wasn't prepared for was that most of this movie is sad. It's funny, poignant, and endearing, but sad. The three characters, Paul, Angus, and Mary, are all lonely, and the social gatherings of the holidays make their isolation glaringly obvious. But it's only in facing this loneliness that they can forge connections. The three make an unlikely trio, but the performances are so lived in and authentic that you can't help but fall in love with them. The film explores the melancholy and joy that the holidays can bring, but really, it's just all around fun to watch. You don't need to try to think too deeply or take something away from this movie, this perfectly choreographed world its characters are bruised by, but survive.
Sir, I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
The premise of Anatomy of a Fall isn't necessarily one that appears like the extremely impactful narrative it ends up being. A courtroom drama to determine if a man's death was murder or an accident ends up being a riveting and gut-wrenching dissection of human relationships as a whole. Sandra Hüller has been receiving high praise and recognition for her performance, and deservedly so. But I think almost equally impressive within the film is Milo Grainer, who plays her son. Looking at the veiled gaze of his eyes, which both see and fail to see, it forces you to ask as an audience, when and under what emotional pressure does a memory shift from being a reliable account of something to a story that we tell ourselves about what we wish had happened? Consistently captivating and heartbreaking, he really is the emotional through line of the film.
I'm innocent, you know that, right?
For a movie to be as appalling and suspenseful as Anatomy of a Fall is, it truly goes to show how effective the writing is here, as the screenplay almost entirely takes place within a courtroom, yet the film never feels strictly like a courtroom drama. The movie feels so real and authentic that oftentimes you feel as if you're intruding on details of this marriage that makes you uncomfortable as an audience member. Its capacity to provoke is unmatched, as this movie stuck with me for a long time after I had watched it. Maybe the hardest watch of the year, and no, not just because it's 93 hours long. Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon follows the true story of a series of murders of Osage members after oil was discovered on their tribal land. The film is extremely raw and visceral, and Scorsese has a way of making you really feel as if you're actually there, never cutting away from scenes that are so subtly brutal. I mean, I guess he never really cut at all. The film is 4 hours. Lily Gladstone gives an outstanding performance and somehow steals the show from two of the greatest to ever do it. The story's romance is warmly inviting, and DiCaprio and Gladstone work beautifully together. Their different performance styles. DiCaprio's character Ernest is physically demonstrative, while Gladstone's character Molly is much more reserved. This gives a captivating contrast and dynamic between the two. You believe in these characters, but also, crucially, you believe them as a couple, which the film needed to execute perfectly, and it does.
Their time is over. It's just going to be another tragedy.
The characters often lean into each other so that their foreheads touch, as if to silently share their thoughts, and as the audience, we know where the story is heading, which makes these moments all the more horrific. Scorsese crafted an unsettling masterpiece.
Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
Easily one of the most deeply disturbing films I've ever seen. The Zone of Interest is a bone-chilling masterpiece that explores the horrifying normalcy of life next to Auschwitz during World War II. The film captures the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust through subtle moments and contrasts, leaving most of the horror to be imagined in one's mind. It's the type of film you'll never want to watch again, but will almost need to so you can unpack and understand everything it's saying. It's a deconstruction of the irony of the oppressors living right next door to the oppressed, allowing us to reflect upon our own humanity and capacity for evil. The movie we see and the movie we hear are very different, yet both are very bleak. In doing this though, the film cements the idea that it really is two movies here. The first is the one that we're watching on the screen, and the second is the film that exists solely in our minds, kept behind the concrete walls that we'll never cross. The way this film unfolds is genuinely surprising at pretty much every step of the way. It's one of those movies that grows more complex the more you sit with it, and doesn't really comfortably sit in one genre by the time the film ends. If you don't know, May December is loosely inspired by a real-life scandal. It stars Natalie Portman as an actress who travels to meet and study the life of the controversial woman played by Julianne Moore, a woman infamous for the relationship with her husband, which began when he was 13 years old. One of the many things the film touches upon is the examination of the thin walls we build around awfulness to keep it out of sight and out of mind. Elizabeth keeps saying she wants to find the truth, but in reality there's no deeper truth to be found. The situation is exactly as messed up as it appears at first glance.
It's a very complex and human story.
The events of May December are so objectively appalling, they scream for a moral judgment to be handed down. And yet the deeper it goes, the more confusing things get, and it's unsettling to be confused in a film about this subject. At first, Elizabeth is an innocent, nice enough woman, strolling through a strange world. Essentially, she's us as the audience. But then she's invited to speak with a high school drama club at one point in the film, and things take such a bizarre turn from here. It's one of the most uncomfortable scenes within a film that is filled with uncomfortable scenes.
It's the complexity, it's the moral gray areas that are interesting, right?
Throughout the film, I found myself asking, is she transforming because she's becoming Gracie, or is the real Elizabeth finally being revealed? You have to completely rethink Elizabeth at all points of the film, and even long after it ends. Julianne Moore's performance is also interesting because at a certain point, you have to face the possibility that there isn't more to Gracie than meets the eye, and that's terrifying. I could go on and on about this film as it just gets better the more I think about it. The film is a dark comedy that just keeps getting darker and darker.
You're Gracie.
So I went into this film knowing nothing about it, and it hit me like this. Led me down a dark path, and I still haven't recovered.
Everybody stay clear.
It's a film in which its biggest strength is that it's quiet and filled with nuance. The subtlety within Past Lives is what provides the authenticity felt throughout the entirety of its runtime. If you go into this film without digging into the subtle moments, without analyzing the scenes where nothing is said at all, and without thinking deeper about the meaning behind such nuance, then the film could easily pass you by. But if you do, you will end up like me, having just watched one of the best movies of the year.
There's just this kid in my head for such a long time. I think I just missed him.
Did he miss you?
Past Lives centers around Nora, a Korean playwright who immigrates twice to make it to New York and finds herself on the cusp of a promising career with an American writer husband, Arthur, to share her dreams with. With all of that ahead of her though, she finds herself looking back on life in Korea and her childhood sweetheart, who she reunites with through social media. The synopsis sounds redundant and simple, a film I wasn't really looking forward to at all. But Past Lives is masterfully done.
The guy flew 13 hours to be here. I'm not gonna tell you that you can't see him or something.
Past Lives foregoes outsized emotions in favor of something quieter and understated. The most heartbreaking thing about the film doesn't have to do with relationships at all, but rather it's the heartbreak of saying goodbye to infinite possibilities, of mourning all the lives you could have lived. It's about letting go of the life you had in your mind and accepting what's in front of you. The story's power rests in the idea that while building a life is often difficult and not always exciting, it's also one of the bravest things one can do. This shot right here is maybe the best in a film all year, and to think that this is Celine Song's directorial debut is astonishing to say the least. Past Lives reveals the emptiness of fantasizing about magical fixes, reminding us about the beauty in a life lived presently. But if you're a human and you're watching this video right now, I don't recommend watching it.
Be sure emergency medical services have been called.
What sort of feels like the culmination of Christopher Nolan's career in a way. There's elements from each of his movies within his storied and wonderful filmography that turn Oppenheimer from run-of-the-mill biopic to an outstanding cinematic achievement. The film follows the true story of the top-secret Manhattan Project, where Oppie, I call him Oppie, and a team of scientists spend years developing and designing the atomic bomb. Their work eventually comes to fruition as they witness the world's first nuclear explosion, forever changing the course of history and the world as we know it.
And the world is not prepared.
The film is essentially the idea of,
yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Fleshed out into the most captivating and intense biopic I've ever seen. I understand both why Oppenheimer and his team wished to make the bomb, but also why many of them regretted their work. And Nolan explores this idea with masterful nuance. Oppenheimer spent the rest of his life communicating regret through action, though he voiced none. He seemed to feel atomic weapons were a necessary deterrent to war, yet deterred their actual use. For example, he never publicly denounced his research, yet actively worked to hamper progress on the H-bomb, and the film navigates this complex struggle with such precision and thought-provoking execution. The film is engaging, important, beautifully written, and features maybe the best scene of the year. It's wonderfully acted, as it almost feels that every few minutes another top-tier actor you didn't know was in the film shows up to deliver a performance of their career. And of course, it's masterfully directed. Oppenheimer kind of leaves you exhausted, but in the best way possible. Not to mention that an R-rated, 3-hour biopic, partially shot in black and white, that's primarily composed of just people talking in rooms, feels so cinematic and riveting. in a way only Nolan could do. And also grossed $1 billion at the box office in the way only Nolan could do. And it's without a doubt the movie of 2023 for me. Okay, so a couple of films that I really wanted to check out before making this video, but I just never had a chance to, were The Iron Claw and Poor Things. But I'll either make dedicated videos, or you can follow me on Letterboxd, as I'll definitely be posting my thoughts there. I'll have it linked in the description, and I also never did see 80 for Brady, so who knows, maybe it would have made the top 10. But most importantly, what movies do you have on your best of 2023 list? What movies do you have on your worst of the year list? Do you agree with my picks? Hate my picks? Give me your top 10 below. Or whatever else you're thinking, put it in the comments section down below. Hit that like button, sub to the channel. Peace.
How you know God plans for all of us?
Because God gives his toughest battle to his toughest children.